Hello and welcome to the Chess Bit, the live stream where two guys talk about the World Chess Championship. It's the very last of these live streams we'll be doing, Phil. But who better to be doing it than with you? So, how are you?
Okay. This has been quite the journey, has it not? Last 2 weeks with we thought it was going to go to the wire, and now it's all over suddenly after just 11 games. We're going to get the weekend off, John. What a treat.
Yeah, I'm going to get some sleep, I think, this weekend, and I'm not going to have to write another newsletter immediately afterwards. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to recouping. I think that game 6, took a lot out of us, didn't it? And I still don't feel like I've recovered after that, but I don't know if that's an experience that you've shared.
I mean, I was away at the time, wasn't I? I was in Glasgow, but it was just the emotion of the match just ramped up so much there with that. I mean, yeah, as I wasn't doing the commentary, I wasn't really watching it. I was just kind of on a plane in an airport, just watching it very casually. But then it gave us more to talk about, right? And it meant that our stuff early this week has become much more energetic, I suspect, because we were, I think, we weren't getting bored. That's not what you're saying. But the amount of energy in the match definitely ramped up there. And I think in the first week, that was ideal almost. It kind of just bedded everyone into the match. And you have 5 consecutive draws, some of which had intrigue, some of which did not. But it was just such an explosion, wasn't it? It was like a volcano. It was just like a volcanic eruption where you just got this everything's just ebbing under the surface. And then it just all kicked off at once with that incredible longest game of the World Championship ever last Friday. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like it was longer than a week ago. It just does. This time last week, we didn't know what was coming. This time last week, they just arrived at that. We just had that bit before the time control where Magnus he didn't barely survive, but he was definitely under time pressure at that moment at 4:39 p.m. Yeah, it was in that kind of bit just before the time control. And then little did we know we still had 3.5 hours of that game. But it killed Nepo. It wasn't just the result, was it? It was the significance of, as you say, the amount of time it took, the amount of energy it took out of him. And yeah, I mean, I was saying yesterday with David that, yeah, an 8-hour game, losing an 8-hour game, yeah, he was saying he'd be on the floor. But Nepo had to get up the next day and do it again, and so did Magnus. And they had that quick draw. And then Sunday, clearly, Nepo just still hadn't dealt with it, and Magnus had. And that was the issue. And it was probably just the result. Maybe if Magnus loses that in 136 moves, the same thing happens to him on Sunday. We won't know. But, I mean, I've lost a 7-hour game before. The next day, I actually drew with an international master the next day. But I blundered. He offered me a draw, and I blundered while rejecting the draw. So I was still a bit foggy, let's say, from that. But yeah, God, it's just that one moment. I mean, they talk about it in the press conference just now, Game 6 as the turning point, and it's. I mean, that was. Magnus went on to win 3 of the next 5 games as well, and here we are. It's gone. It's just gone very, very quickly since that. It's just flatlining. Nepo's just off the cliff, and Magnus hasn't had to do much this week.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because obviously there is that seismic shift that takes place across Game 6, and up until that point, the narratives had been that actually, Nepo was creeping towards becoming, like, if not in with an outside chance of winning, like certainly matching Carlsen for the chess that was being played. And I suppose that precipitous decline just goes to show, like, just how much pressure there is in terms of, you've got to be on your absolute A game to match Magnus. And if you don't, then then that belief can just ebb away immediately. And it does feel very much as though that's what's happened here, is that when he was drawing, he still believed that he could do it. And it's just the first sign of that not being the case at the end of that 8-hour game, where it could have gone either way. And that's all it took for him to just lose his nerve, by the looks of it, which is an interesting thing to see. It's hard really to talk about these things, because we've made it. I think we've made it pretty clear throughout our conversations on this during this World Chess Championship that it's so easy to just narrate what happens and fit it into a model of what you have, how you want to do it. And maybe I'm in danger of having done that there, by talking about how, you know, we sort of had parity, real tension, like good quality chess, like draws where there was edge, and then it just hits that point and falls away. But it does go to show, I think, just how much of an incumbency now Magnus is developing for himself, right? He's had every opportunity now to learn how to play match play World Championship chess, and I think that as time goes on, right, it feels as though he's just going to be the favorite because of the experience he's developed. And I suppose that raises questions. We were talking before we went live about Caruana being the only person who can match him, and I guess Caruana, the thing he has in his favor is he's done this as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that level of experience that Magnus has picked up just in this match play format?
So I was looking this afternoon at the 1993 World Championship, the short Kasparov, just for, I can't remember why, but you know, you fall down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, right? And I was looking at the qualification, and what you had was the interzonal Swiss tournaments that would create, I think, 11 or 12 players, and then you get a few seeds thrown in to make a 15-player bracket. In the 1993 version, Karpov was seeded directly into the second round of that. So you had 14 players, 7 matches. I think they were 8 game matches at least. And then they go into the last 8, so and so forth. Shorts won against Karpov was best of 10 in the semi-finals, and Short Timon was best of 14, which is exactly what we've just had. In fact, it's more games, isn't it, than we had in 2018. So the match play format for the qualifiers, to me, makes more sense than having this closed round robin tournament. Because
it's almost like prep, right?
It's prep, and it just means that, I mean, players just don't play matches anymore. They just don't. There's not really a thing. Certainly not to this length. I'm not saying you have to have exactly that, but you could have a few, couldn't you? I mean, you could have the best of 8, say, in the final, and that would be something rather than this 14. I mean, in the candidates tournament, it's 14 games. That's as many as you got in the candidates final in 1991, was it, or 92, to determine the challenger. So while nobody else, I mean, if Carlsen keeps getting different challenges, as looks possible, we might get Faruja next year, or we might get, I don't know, Ding or someone coming through, then they're not going to necessarily have the requisite match play experience to then go and play match play for it all, whereas Magnus has done it all before. If Caruana comes back, or Karyakin, or Nepo again, it's not ridiculous, then they will. I mean, Nepo was asked in the press conference about how his his experience is going to help him in the future. Well, I think realistically, it's only going to help him if he plays Carlsen again. There's nothing else that exists. So while the format remains as it is with this 8-player double round robin, it's not necessarily A, the best way to select a challenger, but B, it's not particularly helpful because it doesn't really indicate, it's not really an indicator of how they'll get on either too. So while Carlsen is young, while Carlsen is motivated, and while Carlsen is still the best player in the world, I can't see anybody beating him in a match. But Caruana is probably got the best chance of doing that. But Nepo and Karyakin, I think it's really interesting that the last 3 challenges are all in the candidates, and that's something we haven't really talked about, and we can do. In the future, we'll have plenty of opportunities. It's only going to be happening in the summer, and we don't even know who 2 of the players are yet. I think that is a big part of what's happened here. Nepo just didn't have the requisite experience. And Duncan's asked here, Nepo turned up with a different team this morning. Do you think that indicates a falling out in his camp? I have no idea, Duncan. Sorry, I can't even speculate. Maybe. I mean, the whole thing just seems very closed door, doesn't it, with the Russian camp?
One of the interesting things that Magnus was talking about in the press conference, or at least he was asked, was about how he was maybe slightly more conservative in his approach. And that was something that I think was a comment that maybe Nepo had made to Mike Klein in a back room somewhere. But and he gave an interesting answer to that insofar as he said he was definitely more conservative with the black pieces than he was with the white pieces.
It was the other way round, actually.
Caruana.
No, it's the other way around. He said he's more conservative with white.
Did he?
I think. Did you not?
I thought it was black.
I was wrong.
Maybe you can check. He said he was more conservative with black than he was against Caruana, but he said with white he felt he wasn't that conservative. He did try and make things happen. So that's how I remember it. But what do you make of that? Like, what do you? Because we talked a little bit about it, and I think at the beginning of the tournament in particular, the match in particular, when we were going through that sort of long phase of draws, and everyone was like, "Oh, draws are the worst thing ever," and now look where we are. But
they got their wish, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm interested in. Is like, what does elder statesman Magnus look like in the World Championship scene? Is it going to be the case that he's going to be less flamboyant as time goes on in World Chess Championships? Will he just become more and more? I think the phrase he used was solid. He played serious and solid chess, I think was the quote. But what do you make of all that? Or do you think that will just be very much opponent dependent?
I think we can draw some rough parallels with Kasparov at this point, because Magnus has been world champion for 8 years now. So this one is basically short in Kasparov's lineage in the timeline of his world championships. Well, yeah, because it's his 5th world championship win. Short,
right? In both senses of the word.
That's what Kasparov said during the candidates, isn't it? He said that he thought the short was going to win and it would be short. Yeah, it's going to be short and short. That's what Kasparov said. Which was interesting at the time. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but yeah, the fact that Kasparov could see who he thought was going to win in out of these matches. He didn't think it was going to be Karpov. It's a really good quote. I think we can roughly say that this is the equivalent of the short match. 5th World Championship win, I think. 85, 86, 87. Yeah, 5th. After 8 years, again, same thing. They're similar age. Kasparov, I think, at this point was 30. Magnus is just turned 31. Very, very similar. And Kasparov blew short away. So the next World Championship challenger to Kasparov was Anand 2 years later. And Anand probably came, as we saw, because he was world champion still 18 years after his match against Kasparov, probably came slightly too soon for him against Kasparov. And we may see that if it's Firouzja, for example. To answer your question,
what was the timeline after that? I don't know.
Well, after that, he then lost to Kramnik 5 years later after not managing to get a match with Shirov.
Right, okay.
So
he won
possible.
6 in total.
Yeah,
and that's the record, presumably.
I'm not sure about that. I think they're possibly Lasker might have won lots. You have to look that up, but certainly in modern times, that's definitely easily the record. I think that.
Yeah, it's joint record with Karpov and Lasker.
Okay. With Karpov? No, Karpov.
I guess including 3 when... It says 3 when split.
Including the FIDE nonsense. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But that's Kasparov still has 2 when split, according to this as well. So
okay. Yeah. Kasparov
Incidentally, someone's already updated the Wikipedia page to put Magnus on 5, so now level with Mikhail Botvinnik and Anand himself.
Okay. Kasparov in his 30s didn't really change. His style maybe became a bit more solid in inverted commas because of what was happening in just generally in chess with the advent of computers and engines. I think Kasparov definitely could get away with less in the King's Indian, for example, his more attacking choices, and the Sicilian. And there were some very famous losses, notably against Svidler in I think 97, where his Sicilian just fell down. But I don't see that happening with Carlsen. I think Carlsen will just. I mean, he's just a complete player. He doesn't seem to ever take any risks. What you might find with Carlsen as he gets older is that life takes over. If he gets a family, if he, I don't know, anything could happen. I mean, it's like such a big, trying to compare someone's life between 22 and 31 and then, what might happen before he's 40. I mean, for most people, that's going to involve a hell of a lot of things. With Magnus, maybe not, but I don't know what he wants. But we might see that, a conservative, more tired style if he's been up all night changing nappies. I think that the parallels with Kasparov are fairly clear at this point, and that Kasparov just got beaten in the end in 2000 by a better prepped, probably at that point better opponent in Kramnik, who was the whatever you call him, the challenger, the what's the word?
Heir apparent.
Heir apparent. That's what I'm going for. Yeah. Whereas Anand probably wasn't that at the time. Whereas Firouzja and Carlsen is maybe the dynamic we need, but I think next year might be too soon. I think this summer might be too soon for Firouzja to qualify in the first place. I think Caruana probably gets it done. But yeah, it's going to be a fun whatever we're going to have, like 15 months before the next world title challenge.
I guess the thing with Carlsen being a complete player, as you've described him, is that you can be a lot more flexible as you get older, and you can work on the things that you're maybe, I don't know, you'll obviously lose your edge in certain skills, but if you can fall back on other areas, then I guess it gives you a little bit more longevity in that sense.
Well, people always saying that he's bad at endgames, which is just wild. Maybe he's not the best in the world at endgames, but the point is he never seems to get them. He's already won by
exactly.
then.
You've never seen him lose them because he never arrives there.
Yeah, exactly. His middle game play is just unbelievable. And Geary was very, very good on commentary today. Just said all the right things. Just perfect kind of. It sounds glib, but it's just true how Magnus was just playing very, very constructively and letting Nepo fall apart, which is true. He was just playing I'll find the exact quote. It was very, very good. It was, what did he say? He said, he just broke him with all these solid moves. That's what Geary said about Magnus. Magnus just broke Nepo with all those solid moves, just by doing nothing and just encouraging Nepo to go wrong or having to do something. And that's not just, that wasn't just in today. That was mainly game 6, actually. And then Magnus, doing that little sacrifice to queen for 2 rooks, he didn't have to do much after that.
Before we end, we should talk a little bit about the Blitz and Rapids, because it's been confirmed, I believe, that they will be happening in Poland at the same time as it was supposed to be happening. Is that right?
Yeah, just why not put it in another country with dodgy government? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, if you want to get around COVID protocols, is probably the best way of doing it, I suppose. What do you make of that? Is that going to be an interesting tournament, and is it going to be an interesting tournament for these two guys? Presumably, they'll both be competing in it, will they?
I would be surprised if Nepo plays.
Okay.
I'd be very surprised. Magnus may yet pull out, not just because of this, but because of COVID or anything. I mean, it's like 2 weeks away, but I'd be surprised if Nepo plays. The event itself, yeah, it should be fun. I think it's always a good addition to the Christmas calendar. It's something a bit different. It seems to go very quickly. I think Magnus, though, he's going to be looking to defend. Or is he defending both titles? Did Naka win the Blitz last time? I can't remember.
No, he won both last time. I think.
He won both last time. Yeah, that he finished half a point clear of Naka or something. But there'll be no Naka this year, will there? Naka's basically given up by the sounds of it. And but being in Poland,
dollar as a streamer, right? Who can blame him?
But being in Poland rather than Kazakhstan or wherever it was going to be initially,
Myanmar probably.
Might encourage more. Certainly, might encourage more British players to play. That's not ridiculous. That now that just like little, it's like what? It's not far at all. If they started walking now, they'd get there. All these, your Gawain Jones and David Howells of the world may well turn up.
Yeah, and we will be covering that, I hope, in some way.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is do a big recap next week, and then have a little break, and then do that, and then we'll see. But thank you to everyone for getting involved in this match. It's been really fun doing daily things in a different way.
Yeah, it's been great fun. And so I echo Phil's sentiments to thank everyone in the chat. It's good to see Duncan ever present, and Radio Martin as well, a regular in the chat. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And as Phil says, we will be back next week with a big Christmas bumper World Chess Championship special review. In some way, we've not really thought about how we're going to do that, but
our titles are always snappy though. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely don't make them up as we go along. But yeah, Phil, it's been great chatting. It's been great following this through. This is the first World Championship that I've really followed in any great detail. So yeah, it's been good fun. But yeah, I'll let everyone get on. Have a great Friday evening, everyone, and enjoy a weekend off. We've been saved from more bad chess, I suppose. But let's hope that's not the way that the World Chess Championship is remembered this time around. But thanks again.